Oh, Vikings, let's win this game.
Vikings fans, that strange tension hanging over this franchise again. The kind that shows up right before a season where nobody outside Minnesota believes, but inside that locker room, inside that building, there's pressure everywhere. Veterans fighting for their future, young players trying to steal jobs, a quarterback situation that could either revive this team or split Vikings Nation right down the middle. And somehow, buried underneath all of that, there's one longtime cornerstone who may quietly be nearing the end of his run in purple and gold. There's a weird feeling surrounding the safety room right now, and the closer we get to camp, the harder it is to ignore. For years, Vikings fans never had to think twice about this position. You had stability, leadership, intelligence. Harrison Smith erased mistakes before they even happened. But now, everything feels unsettled, and the player suddenly getting caught in the middle of all this uncertainty is Theo Jackson. Bleacher Report recently named him as a surprise cut candidate for Minnesota, and honestly, that hits a little harder than people realize, because this isn't some random depth guy nobody cares about. Theo Jackson quietly became part of Brian Flores' defensive identity last season. He played real snaps, important snaps, around 60% of the defensive workload, and you could actually see the trust growing week by week. That's what makes this uncomfortable. The Vikings drafted Jacoby Thomas in the 3rd round, and now suddenly the math starts changing. Harrison Smith still hasn't officially closed the door on returning either, which only adds more pressure to everybody underneath him. And if Smith does come back, somebody's role probably disappears. Maybe somebody's roster spot entirely. That's the brutal side of the NFL fans hate thinking about. One draft pick changes everything for another player overnight. What makes this even more complicated is how Brian Flores uses safeties differently than most coordinators. Josh Metellus isn't a traditional safety. He's basically a football tornado flying around the formation. Jay Ward still feels unproven. Theo Jackson gave them steadiness, reliability, and Flores values players he can trust mentally, especially when the defense is built on disguise and chaos. But if Jacoby Thomas flashes early in camp, if the rookie starts flying downhill and picks up the playbook fast, suddenly this becomes a younger, cheaper, more explosive option. That's when camp stops being camp and starts becoming a job fight. And we've seen this organization lean younger before. That's the part Vikings Nation has to prepare for emotionally. This roster is changing faster than people think. Familiar faces are no longer guaranteed protection anymore. Still, I'll say this. As long as Brian Flores is running this defense, I trust the structure. I trust the aggression. Flores has this ability to make defenders look better than expected because everybody plays with confidence in his system. But there's another layer to all this. Bleacher Report also predicted a pretty mild start to the Vikings season. And the second I saw that word, I laughed a little. Because nothing around this franchise ever feels mild, especially not with a quarterback situation looming over everything. They're predicting a 3-2 start with divisional games immediately putting pressure on this team. Packers, Bears, road tests, expectations, and somehow in the middle of all that chaos, Minnesota's secondary could already be going through emotional turnover before the season even settles in. That's a dangerous combination if things start shaky early. And speaking of dangerous situations, there's another quarterback rumor floating around this franchise right now that honestly feels almost too messy to even believe. Because somehow, despite already having Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy battling for the future of this team, Minnesota's name keeps getting linked to Brendan Sorsby. Yeah, that Brendan Sorsby, the talented quarterback with huge production numbers and an even bigger storm hanging over his career right now. This story gets heavier the longer you sit with it. We're talking about a player who's thrown for over 7,000 yards since 2022, somebody viewed by some scouts as potential first overall pick talent someday, and yet his entire football future is now hanging by a thread because of gambling investigations connected to his Indiana days. The NCAA investigation alone is serious enough. Reports say he admitted to placing bets during his time with the Hoosiers, including bets involving Indiana football. Even if they were reportedly small bets and not tied to game manipulation, the optics are brutal. College football has become ruthless about gambling violations. Careers can disappear fast now, and then you add the lawsuit situation on top of that. Cincinnati reportedly seeking $1 million for breach of contract, lawyers getting involved, rehab treatment, uncertainty everywhere. This thing spiraled unbelievably fast. But what caught everybody's attention was Jeff Howe mentioning that the Vikings could basically become the floor for Sorsby if a supplemental draft happens. That's the phrase that stuck with fans. The floor, meaning teams around the league may believe Minnesota would seriously consider taking a swing on him if the value drops low enough. And honestly, can you completely dismiss it? Kevin O'Connell has built a reputation around quarterback development. This organization constantly looks for upside at the position, and if there's one thing the Vikings front office has shown repeatedly, it's that they're willing to gamble on talent if they believe the structure can stabilize the player. But this situation feels different emotionally. Vikings fans have already lived through enough quarterback instability over the years, enough drama, enough uncertainty. Do you really want another major question mark entering that room right now while Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy are already battling for control of the offense? Because make no mistake, that competition is going to dominate this season emotionally. Adding another controversial quarterback name into the mix almost feels exhausting before it even begins. And yet, there's still intrigue there. That's the uncomfortable truth. Talent always keeps the door cracked open in the NFL, especially at quarterback, even when the baggage feels overwhelming. And that's why this rumor won't just disappear quietly. You know what's fascinating, though? While everybody debates quarterbacks and roster battles, one of the most respected voices in football just sent a direct message that Vikings fans needed to hear. And it wasn't soft either. Warren Moon basically challenged Kyler Murray publicly, not in a disrespectful way, more like a football elder looking at a gifted quarterback and saying, "No more excuses now." And honestly, he's right. This is probably the most complete roster Kyler Murray has ever stepped into. The defense looks dangerous under Brian Flores. The offensive weapons are legitimate. Kevin O'Connell has revived quarterbacks before. The infrastructure is sitting there waiting for somebody to take control of it. That's the key word, control. Warren Moon pointed directly at leadership, accountability, emotional maturity. He said Murray has to give more of himself to the football team. And that hit me because Vikings fans know exactly what he means. Quarterback isn't just talent, it's emotional ownership. It's making everybody believe when things get ugly in November. And that's always been the frustrating thing with Kyler Murray. One week he looks unstoppable. The next week you're wondering where the fire went. Kay Adams said something similar that honestly captured what so many football fans feel watching him. She called him one of the most frustrating quarterbacks in the league because his raw ability looks better than almost everybody's. That's what drives people crazy. The talent is obvious, the arm strength, the mobility, the improvisation. He can make throws that feel unfair. But leadership, consistency, emotional command of the locker room, those questions have followed him his entire career. And now he's walking into a Vikings organization that desperately wants stability at quarterback. Meanwhile, J.J. McCarthy is sitting right there, quietly learning, quietly waiting, quietly understanding this offense after years inside Kevin O'Connell's system. That's what gives this competition real teeth. Murray might have more experience, more star power. But McCarthy has familiarity, patience, and the support of fans who've spent years dreaming about finally developing a young franchise quarterback correctly. That pressure is real, whether people admit it or not. And Warren Moon saying it's all in his possession if he wants it might be the most important statement anybody's made this offseason. Because if Kyler Murray fails here, Vikings Nation may never fully buy into him again, but if he finally locks in mentally and emotionally inside this system, this offense could become terrifying. And while all the quarterback drama keeps grabbing headlines, there's another situation quietly building that could completely reshape Brian Flores' defense before the trade deadline. Because right now, there's growing speculation connecting Minnesota to Giants pass rusher Kayvon Thibodeaux. And honestly, the second you hear the name, your brain immediately starts racing, because this defense lost Jonathan Greenard. That still feels strange to say out loud. Greenard brought pressure, disruption, violence off the edge. Even when the sack totals didn't always tell the full story, offenses had to account for him constantly. Now the Vikings are basically placing a gigantic spotlight directly on Dallas Turner. And that pressure, it's enormous. Former Viking Ben Lieber already said it clearly. This season is huge for Turner. No more easing him in slowly. No more rotational comfort zone. This is the year Minnesota needs him becoming a true three-down difference maker. Somebody offenses fear. Somebody who changes drives. Somebody who finishes sacks instead of almost getting there. And if that development stalls even a little, that's when the Thibodeaux rumors stop feeling like noise and start feeling like an escape hatch. Fansided floated Minnesota as a potential landing spot because the Giants are overloaded with edge talent right now. Of course, New York publicly says they're not trading him. Every team says that until the phone calls get serious. But imagine Flores getting his hands on a player like Kayvon Thibodeaux. The explosiveness, the speed, the aggression in this defensive structure. You can already picture it. The problem is, the timing feels messy. Minnesota still doesn't officially have stability in the general manager situation, and making a major trade without clear front office leadership makes fans nervous for good reason. Vikings fans have seen enough rushed roster decisions over the years to understand how dangerous desperation moves can become, especially after moving Greenard for what many fans still believe was too little return. But emotionally, there's another side to this conversation too. The Vikings defense feels close, like really close. Flores has built an identity here. Aggressive, unpredictable, physical, and when a defense feels close to becoming elite, organizations start getting aggressive to complete the picture. That's why this matters beyond one rumor, because if Dallas Turner struggles early, if the pass rush disappears at critical moments, Minnesota may absolutely start exploring bold options, and the second a player like Thibodeaux becomes even remotely available, Vikings fans are going to start dreaming about what this defense could become by December. But honestly, none of these stories hit me emotionally quite like this last one. Because this one feels personal for Vikings fans who've been watching this team for years. There's something painful about realizing one of the most reliable players of an era might quietly be nearing the end. Brian O'Neill has been part of this franchise for so long now that it almost feels impossible imagining the offensive line without him. Through coaching changes, through quarterback changes, through heartbreak, through rebuilds, he just kept showing up, consistent, tough, professional. And now suddenly there's real discussion about whether this could be his final season in Minnesota. That stings. It really does. Adam New from Vikings territory put O'Neill at the top of a list of players who may be entering their last year with the organization, and the logic behind it honestly makes too much sense to completely ignore. He's entering the final year of that massive 5-year contract. Over $92 million. He'll be in his 30s, and this organization has clearly started getting younger and cheaper in key areas. We've watched it happen all offseason. That's the modern NFL reality. Emotion doesn't protect veterans forever anymore. Cap flexibility matters. Long-term planning matters. Rob Brzezinski and this front office are always thinking 2 or 3 years ahead. But here's where Vikings Nation gets pulled in two directions. Brian O'Neill is still really good. Like, legitimately good. Pro Bowl level good. His PFF grades remain elite. He can still move people in the run game. He still protects quarterbacks at a high level. Reliable offensive tackles do not grow on trees in this league. And when you potentially have a young quarterback developing, whether it's McCarthy or even Murray stabilizing himself long-term, protecting that investment becomes everything. One missed decision there can echo for years. So now fans are stuck in this emotional balancing act. Do you pay an aging veteran another major contract because he's earned it? Or do you move on 1 year too early instead of 1 year too late? That's one of the hardest decisions any organization faces. And injuries complicate everything. O'Neill missed time last season with the MCL sprain. There were Achilles concerns before that. Offensive linemen age fast sometimes. Vikings fans know that all too well. But man, losing somebody like Brian O'Neill would feel bigger than football. He represents stability, loyalty, toughness. One of the few players from past eras who carried himself the right way through all the chaos. And if this really is his final ride in purple and gold, I don't think Vikings Nation is emotionally prepared for that reality yet. That's what makes this offseason feel different. Every direction you look, there's uncertainty tied to somebody important. Young players trying to prove they belong. Veterans fighting to hold on to their place. Quarterbacks carrying enormous expectations. And underneath it all, Kevin O'Connell is trying to hold this thing together, while the franchise quietly shifts into another era. That's why this season feels emotional already before a single snap has even happened. So let me know what you're feeling right now, Vikings Nation. Which storyline has your attention the most heading toward camp? Because whether it's fear, hope, excitement, or cautious optimism, we're all riding this thing together. And no matter how chaotic it gets, no matter how many changes keep coming, we'll still be here defending the North in purple and gold. Stay tuned. SKOL Vikings, let's go.